Okay. Good morning, all. Let's we start our next topic, that is fungi, general characters, definition of fungus, somatic structures, types of fungal thalli, fungal tissue, and modification of the thallus. Before starting the lecture, I want to add modification of all the student, that is our YouTube channel having the 821 subscriber, and our students are more than the 400 students are there, and everyone that will be subscribed to our channel. But that's you can make an activity. सर्वांनी एक ऍक्टिव्हिटी बनवायची की maximum people they can subscribe our channel. If all of you get 10 subscriber, means 100 students, 120 students are there, 190 students are there, each having 10 number of people, then 1090 subscriber, that will be possible. So everyone make at least 10 subscriber to our YouTube channel. प्रत्येकानं 10 कमीत कमी सबस्क्रायबर आपल्या चॅनलला त्या ठिकाणी करायचे आहेत. उद्या सुट्टी आहे, उद्याच्या दिवसात हे टार्गेट कंप्लीट होईल. मला वाटतं प्रत्येकाने 10 जरी केले तरी 119 विद्यार्थी आहेत. 1190 सबस्क्रायबर जवळपास आपले तुमच्या मार्फत होऊ शकतात, आणि पुढचं तुम्ही 190 म्हणजे तुमच्या एका क्लास कडून जवळपास 1200 सबस्क्रायबर मी अपेक्षित करतो. तर प्रत्येकानं सबस्क्राईब स्वतः तर करायचंच आहे, पण आपले घरचे असतील किंवा जे युअर फ्रेंड्स अदर दॅन आवर कॉलेज, आपल्या कॉलेजच्या व्यतिरिक्त इतर काही कॉलेजांचे तुमचे मित्र असतील, दे कॅन ऑल्सो सबस्क्राईब आवर चॅनल. वी वॉन्ट टू मेक इट ऍक्टिव्हिटी अँड all lectures that will be put under our college channel name, that is Ishram Shakti College of Agriculture. Under that, all subject lecture that will be posted in due course of time. So we start our next chapter, that is the general characteristic of the fungus, then definition of fungus, somatic structures of fungus, different types of fungal thalli, fungal tissue, as well as modification of the thallus. Okay, in the chapter we'll discuss all these chapters. First of all, the most important thing, that is the definition of fungus. Definition of fungus. What do I fungus? Fungi are the eukaryotic spore-bearing, achlorophyllous, heterotrophic organism that generally reproduce sexually and asexually, and both filamentous branched somatic structures are typically surrounded by a cell wall, and these cell wall that contains either chitin or cellulose or both, with many organic molecules and exhibiting absorptive nutrition. This is the definition of fungus. Fungus are eukaryotic nature. All of you know about the eukaryote. Eukaryotic nature means they possesses a well-developed nucleus. They possesses a well-developed nucleus, or the cell organelle that can be bounded by the well-defined membrane, that we call eukaryotic. Second thing, spore-bearing means they can produce the different spores. Spores is a reproductive unit of fungus, and these fungi that either produces the sexual or asexual spore. Next point, that is the achlorophyllus. What do you mean achlorophyllus means? They devoid of chlorophyll or they having lack of chlorophyll means they cannot synthesize their own food material. They cannot synthesize their own food material and they depends on others. They depends on others for their nutrient requirement. That is the achlorophyllus. Then heterotrophic, that is nothing but they can depend on the other for their nutrition and they can generally reproduce by the sexual or asexual method. Different sexual methods of reproduction. In next chapter we have to discuss that is what are the different methods of reproduction in the fungus. That is sexual and asexual methods of reproduction, and they are the filamentous or the branched somatic structure that will be surrounded by the cellule. The cellule of the fungus that contains either chitin or cellulose, or in some fungus they contain both chitin and cellulose. Okay, so next point, that is the general characteristic of the fungus that we want to study here. That is general characters. There are 8 general characters are there. There are 8 general characters are there. First, that is vegetative thallus. Second, cellule. Third one, nutrition. Fourth one, nuclear status of the fungus. Sexuality. Then life cycle, sporocarps, and distribution of the fungus. Distribution of the fungus. So, which are the general characteristics? That is vegetative thallus, cellule, nutrition, nuclear status, sexuality, life cycle, sporocarps, and distribution of the fungus. These are general characteristics that we want to study here. Vegetative thallus. In this first, vegetative thallus. What do you mean by thallus? Thallus is commonly called as the vegetative body of the fungus. The body of the fungus is called as thallus, and a thallus, plural, that is thalli, is the simple entire body of the fungus that devoid of the chlorophyll with no differentiated into stem, roots, and leaves, lacking the vascular system. Means body of the fungus that do not differentiated into roots, stem, or leaves. There is a simple body, and these vegetative structure of the fungus, that is called as thallus. The thallus having 2 different types, that is eucarpic thallus and holocarpic thallus. Thallus having the 2 different types. First, eucarpic thallus, and second one, holocarpic thallus. In case of eucarpic thallus, the thallus is differentiated into vegetative part, which absorbs the nutrient, and the reproductive part, which forms the reproductive structure. Such a thallus is called as eucarpic thallus. Means, what do you mean by eucarpic thallus? The thallus that should be differentiated into 2 parts, that is vegetative parts, and another one that is reproductive part. Vegetative part is useful for absorbing the nutrients with special structure like the hostelria, while the reproductive part of this thallus that should be produces the reproductive structure of the fungus, that is called as eucarpic thallus. That is, eucarpic thallus means the body of this particular fungus that is divided into 2 parts, that is the vegetative and reproductive part. Vegetative part is useful for absorbing the nutrients, while reproductive part is useful for producing the reproductive structure. Such a thallus or such a body of the fungus, that is called as eucarpic thallus. Second type, holocarpic thallus. Holo means complete. The thalli does not show any differentiation that is the vegetative or reproductive, or that is called as holocarpic thallus. What do you mean by holocarpic thallus? That is, the thallus is not differentiated into vegetative or reproductive structure. That is called as holocarpic thallus. And after the phase of vegetative growth, these thallus that can be converted into the reproductive structure, that thalli is called as holocarpic thallus. Okay, thallus is nothing but the vegetative body of the fungus called as thallus, that will be divided into two, eucarpic and holocarpic thallus. In case of eucarpic thallus, the body that should be differentiated into vegetative and reproductive part. Vegetative part is useful for absorbing the nutrient, while reproductive part is useful for producing the reproductive structure called as eucarpic thallus. And in the next, that is holocarpic thallus, that do not differentiate it into the vegetative or reproductive part, but after the vegetative growth phase, that similar part is converted or gets converted into the reproductive structure, that is called as holocarpic thallus. Okay, this is all about the first character, that is the thallus or the vegetative thallus. In this next definition, that is hypha. In earlier lecture, we already studied what is the definition of hypha. Here, hypha is a thin, transparent, tubular filament filled with the protoplasm. It is the unit of filamentous thallus and grow by apical elongation. Here, in the near image, you can see what do you mean by hypha. Hypha, in simple word, hypha is nothing but the single thread-like structure of the fungus, that is called as hypha. A single thread-like structure of the fungus, that is called as hypha. And another definition, that is the mycelium, a group of hypha, a group of such a hypha, that is called as mycelium, a network of the hypha. So network of the hypha, that is the aggregation of the hypha constituting the filamentous thallus of a fungus, that is called as mycelium. Okay, simply the hypha is nothing but the single thread-like structure of the fungus, that is called as hypha, while mycelium is nothing but the group of such a hypha or the aggregation of such a hyphae into a network, that is called as mycelium. In the first image, you can clearly see that is the hypha. What do you mean by hypha? That is single thread-like structure, or this, that is grow as an apical elongation, that is called as hyphae. Why is there such a group of hyphae, or the in combination, that is aggregation of an hyphae, that structure is called as mycelium. Okay, so next, mycelium is again divided into two different types, that is non-septate mycelium and septate mycelium. Non-septate mycelium and septate mycelium, when a mycelium is not divided by the cross wall. When mycelium is not divided by a cross wall, that is called as non-septate mycelium, or it is also called as coinocytic mycelium or aseptate mycelium. Isn't it? There are three different phenomena are there, that is aseptate, coinocytic, or the non-septate mycelium. When that mycelium is not divided by the cross wall, that is called as non-septate mycelium, while the mycelium is divided with the cross wall, that is called as septate mycelium. Here we studied that is the hypha, a single thread-like structure of the fungus called as hypha. Group of such a hypha is called as mycelium, that having the two different types, that is non-septate and septate mycelium. In non-septate, these not mycelium is not divided by the cross wall, that is called as non-septate. In this image number B, you can see these fungus mycelium is not divided by the cross wall, that is called as a non-septate hypha, while in this case the mycelium that can be divided by the cross walls, that is called as septate mycelium. Okay, clear? Next, there is ectophytic and endophytic mycelium. mycelium, that is the endophytic mycelium, or the another one that is the ectophytic mycelium, or the ectophytic fungus, or the endophytic fungus. What do by ectophytic fungus? If the fungal thallus is present on the external surface of the host plant, यालाच काय म्हटलं जातं ectophytic fungus, or the it is called as ectophytic mycelium, means a fungal thallus that will be present on the external surface of the host plant, means they can be attached to the host plant externally on or the external surface, that is called as ectophytic mycelium, while endophytic mycelium is nothing but, or the endophytic fungus is nothing but, if the fungus is penetrated into the host cell, if the fungus is penetrated into the host cell and remain present inside the host, that is called as endophytic mycelium. Isn't it? Ectophytic means that particular mycelium is present on the host surface to the external body, or the present on the external body of the host, called as ectophytic fungus, or the such a mycelium, that is called as ectophytic mycelium, while those that will be penetrate into the host cells or remain present in the host after the penetration, that is called as endophytic fungus, or the endophytic mycelium. Now, the endophytic mycelium, or the endophytic fungus, that can be divided into three different types, that is intercellular mycelium, intracellular mycelium, and vascular mycelium. Three different types are there. It is intercellular, intracellular, and vascular. That is the type of endophytic. Endophytic means endophytic means they can penetrate into host and present in the host. That is called as the endophytic. While ectophytic means they can present at outer or external surface of the host plant. That is called as ectophytic mycelium or ectophytic fungus. So these endophytic mycelium again divided into three different types. There is intercellular mycelium, intracellular mycelium, and vascular mycelium. What do by intercellular? Inter is nothing but in between. Inter is nothing but the in between the cell. When the hypha or mycelium that grow in between the two cells, that is called as intracellular mycelium. Second one, intracellular hypha, or the mycelium that penetrate into the host cell or growing within the host cell. Means in case of intercellular, the mycelium present in between the two cells, while in case of intracellular, these particular mycelium that penetrate the host cell and that grow within that particular host cell, that is called as intracellular mycelium. Okay, next, that is vascular mycelium. What do by vascular mycelium? The mycelium that growing in a vascular tissues of the plant, mycelium that grow in the vascular tissue of the plant, that is called as vascular mycelium. Okay, intracellular means they can grow in between the cell, intra means within the cell, and vascular mycelium means the mycelium that can be grow in the vascular tissue of the plants. Okay, now the intracellular hyphae that produce the special organ, the intracellular means in between the two cells. If that particular mycelium is grown in between the two cells, they produces a special organ. They produces a special organ, and that organ is known as hostoria, that penetrate the host cell and absorb the food material. लक्षात घ्या, दोन सेलच्या मध्ये ज्यावेळेस मायसिलियम ग्रो होतो, that develop a special organ, and that special organ is called as hostoria. These hostoria, this is the organ of absorption, and they penetrate the host cells and absorb the food material. While these hostoria is absent in case of intracellular hyphae, because these intracellular hyphae is grow inside the cell or within the cell. So intracellular mycelium that absorb the food directly from the protoplasm without any specialized structures. Why these intracellular mycelium absorb the food directly? Because they grow within the cell and they can directly absorb the protoplasm without any specialized structure. While in case of intercellular or those mycelium that grow in between the cell, they require the special organ that organ is called as hostoria, and these hostoria that penetrate the host cell and absorb the food material, that is called as intracellular life. Okay, this is all about the ectophytic or the endophytic fungus. Next one, second characteristic of the fungus, that is the cell wall. Second characteristic of the fungus, that is cell wall. Cell wall is a thin, is a well defined. The fungus cell wall is a complex and flexible structure that is composed basically of chitin or cellulose or both. In definition, I have already stated that these fungus cell wall that either contain chitin or cellulose or both chitin and cellulose. So cellulose is present in case of an oomycetes, those fungus that belongs to oomycetes. In that particular class, the cellulose is present in the cell wall of that particular fungus. As well as these cell wall contain alpha and beta linked glucans, glycoprotein, and pigments. Next one, these living structure of the cell that is called as organelles. The living structure of the particular cell is called as organelles. That organelles are cytoplasm, nucleolus, and protoplasm, while in case of a non-living structures, in case of non-living structures of the cell, that is called as inorganelles, that is the chitin or cellulose. In case of a second characteristic, that is cell wall, most important thing is that cell wall of the fungus that contain either chitin or cellulose or both chitin and cellulose. They also contain alpha and beta linked glucans, glycoprotein, and the different pigments. In case of a cell, those are the living structures that are called as cytoplasm, nucleolus, and protoplasm, that are called as organelles. Those are living structures called as organelles, and the examples of the organelles are cytoplasm, nucleolus, and protoplasm, while those are the non-living structures that are called as inorganelles, that is nothing but the chitin and cellulose. Okay, this is the second characteristic of the fungus. Third characteristic of the fungus, that is nutrition. We want to study about the nutrition. What is the nutrition of fungus? Fungi are the heterotrophic in nutrition. Fungi are heterotrophic in nutrition. Heterotrophic is nothing but they can depend on the others for their food material. That is called as heterotrophs. And these fungus are heterotrophic in nature, that is photosynthesis lacking and absorptive type. Why in case of fungus there is a lack of photosynthesis? Because they are devoid of chlorophyll or lack of chlorophyll pigments. That's why they do not synthesize their own food material. So they have the photosynthesis lacking, and the nutrition that having the absorptive type of nutrition means in case of an intracellular, such a organ like hostoria, they can directly absorb the food from the cell, while in case of an intracellular, they can directly absorb with their protoplasm. Okay, so nutrition of an fungus, that is heterotrophic in nutrition, and that is the photosynthesis lacking as well as the absorptive type. Depends on the nutrition, these fungi that are divided into three different groups according to the nutrition or according to the manner of obtaining the food material. Fungus is divided into three different groups, that is saprophytes or symbionts or symbiosis, and another one that is the parasites. According to the manner of obtaining the food, fungus are divided into three different groups, that is saprophytes, symbionts, and parasites. This parasite again divided into four different types: it is obligate parasite, non-obligate parasite, facultative saprophyte, and facultative parasite. Okay. In detail, groups of the fungi based on the mode of nutrition. First one, that is saprophytes. All of you know about the saprophytes. What do by saprophytes? These saprophytes are nothing but the organism which obtain nutrition from dead organic matter, either completely or for a part of their life. That is called as saprophytes. That is called as saprophytes are nothing but they can be depends on the dead or decaying material. They can be depends on dead or decaying material for their growth and nutrition. That is called as saprophytes, means organisms which obtain nutrition from dead organic matters, either completely or for a part of their life cycle. That is called as saprophytes. There are two types of saprophytes. First one, obligate saprophyte, another one, facultative saprophytes. What do by obligate? Obligate saprophytes means organisms which can never grow on the living organism or can never obtain their food from the living sources. That is called as obligate. Obligate means to bind it. To bind itself means they are the obligate, means they do not grow as an obligate parasite. So obligate saprophytes means they are always living or the growing on the dead organic matter. They cannot depend or they cannot be synthesize their food from the living organism. That is called as obligate saprophyte. While facultative parasite is nothing but the organisms which are usually saprophytic but having ability to become a parasite. That is called as facultative parasite. Facultative parasite is nothing but the organism which are usually saprophytic in nature, means majorly they can be depends on the dead and decaying material, but sometimes they may have ability to become a parasite or may depends or may obtain their food material from the living sources also. That is called as facultative parasite, means they having the ability. Facultas is nothing but the ability. Basically they are the saprophytes, means they can be basically grow on the dead material, but they having the ability to grow on dead or so grow on the living material also. That is called as facultative parasite. Okay, next one, that is parasite. Second type, that is parasite, organism which live within or outside another organism from their nutrition, either completely or a part of their life. That is called as parasite. And all pathogens are not parasite, and all parasite needs not to be pathogen. Means suppose we are the parasite but we are not the pathogens. We are the parasite, means we are dependent on the other, but we are not a pathogen. We are not causing a disease. So all pathogens are not parasite, as well as all parasite need not to be a pathogen. Okay, so these parasites again divided into four. That is obligate parasite. Obligate parasite means organism which obtain their food from the living organism. This definition we will study for more than 10 times. That is obligate parasite is nothing but the dependent on the living organism for their food. That is called an obligate parasite, and these obligate parasites can never derive their food from the dead organic matter or the artificial medium. That is called as obligate parasite. Second one, non-obligate parasite. What do I mean by non-obligate parasite? These organisms which kills the tissues in advance of the penetration and then lives on it. Basically, they can be grow on the live, but before, at the time of infection, they firstly kill the tissues. They kill the living tissues, and after that, in advance, they can be live on the dead tissue. That is called as non-obligate parasite, or it is also called as necrotrophs. The definition is very important. Necrotrophs means those organisms which kill the tissue in advance. At the time of penetration, they firstly kill the tissue and then they can be live on that particular killed tissue. That is called as non-obligate parasite or the necrotrophs. Third one, facultative saprophyte. What do we facultative saprophytes? Organisms which are usually parasites. Organisms which are usually parasites but have ability to become the saprophytes. That is called as facultative saprophytes. Organisms which are usually parasites but have ability to become a saprophyte. That is called as Faculty to saprophytes means organisms which are usually parasites but have ability to become a saprophytes. Basically, their parasite means depends on the living host. Living host. Faculty to saprophytes means organisms which are usually parasites but having ability to become the saprophytes. Means basically they depends on the living but they may live on the dead or decaying material also. And last one, that is faculty to parasite. These are the organisms which are usually saprophytic in nature and their mode of life, but under certain conditions they become the parasite. In previous slide, we also studied that the faculty parasite will be there. Means they are organisms having saprophytic in nature, but they becomes a parasite in the certain stages of their life cycle. Certain stages of their life, they may depends on the living. Next one, nuclear status. What is nuclear status? These particular fungus are eukaryotic multinucleated. Mycelium being homokaryotic or the heterokaryotic or haploid or diploid or that is the dikaryotic. Means these particular fungus are multinucleated means more than one nucleus. Then mycelium being homokaryotic or heterokaryotic means the nuclei that may present in the particular fungus and that either haploid or the diploid means that is the single nucleus or the more than one nucleus that will be present in that particular fungus. The nuclear is a well-defined structure, that is nuclear membrane, nucleus and chromatin material. Nuclear membrane, nucleolus and chromatin material is found in this particular cell of an fungus. Next characteristic, number 5, that is sexuality, that is either sexual or asexual in nature. This fungus is either reproduced by means of a sexual or asexual method, or that is homo or heterothallic. Means what by homothallic? Homothallic is nothing but both male and female sex organ. Homothallic is nothing but both male and female sex organ are present on a single thallus. Means on a single mycelium, there both male and female organ that will be occur. It is called as homothallic. While heterothallic is nothing but both male and female sex organ are present on the different thallus or on the different body. Next one, number 6 character, that is life cycle. Life cycle of the fungus, that is the simple to complex. Sporocarps, that is also known as fruiting body. That is fruiting body is either microscopic or macroscopic and showing limited differentiation. Sporocarp, that is also called as fruiting body, means their structure that contain the spores or these particular structure that bear the spore, that is called as sporocarp. These sporocarps of the fungi are either microscopic or macroscopic, means they can either be seen with your naked eye or they having the require the microscope for their identification. And last one, the distribution, that is the cosmopolitan. Distribution is nothing but the cosmopolitan, means these particular fungus are present everywhere in the nature. Cosmopolitan is nothing but the worldwide or that can be present everywhere in the nature, that is called as cosmopolitan in nature. That is the distribution. So this is all about the particular characteristic of this particular fungus. Okay, remaining topic that we will study in the next lecture. Remaining topic we will study in the next lecture. Due to the unavoidable circumstances, the remaining part we will study in the next lecture. In this lecture, we have studied regarding the general characteristic of the fungus only. There are 8 general characteristics are there. First one, that is vegetative thallus. Second one, cell one. Then nutrition. Number 4, nuclear status, sexuality, life cycle, then sporocarp and distribution. This is all about the general characteristic of the fungus. Remaining part, that is the different somatic structures in the fungus. There are these fungal tissues or the fungal thallus. Then another is the modification of the thallus that we will study in the next lecture. Okay, everybody join.